My family always forgot my birthday while spoiling my siblings, so I threw a lavish party without them and left everyone speechless. I'm a 25-year-old guy named Ethan, and for as long as I can remember, my birthdays have been treated like an afterthought in my family. It's almost become a running joke among my friends, but to me, it's just depressing. Growing up with two siblings who always had their birthdays celebrated like national holidays, I've had a front row seat to the favoritism in my family. Every year, it was the same pattern. My older brother, who's 2 years older, and my younger sister, who's 3 years younger, always got the works: balloons, custom cakes, themed parties, and gifts that made you jealous even if you weren't into whatever they got. Meanwhile, I'd get a last-minute, "Oh, let's grab a cake from the grocery store," if I was lucky. If I wasn't, they'd forget entirely. The first time I realized something was off was on my 8th birthday. That year, I had been looking forward to a small party because my brother had just had an epic, week-long celebration for his 10th. He got a superhero-themed extravaganza with party favors, costumes, and a magician. I didn't expect something on that scale, but I thought at least there'd be a cake. When the day came, nothing, no cake, no balloons, no mention of it being my birthday. I sat through dinner, waiting for someone to say something, but instead, my parents talked about my brother's recent soccer game. When I finally asked if they forgot, my mom brushed it off, saying they'd been busy and would make it up to me next year. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Every year after that was a repeat of the same excuses. We're so busy, birthdays aren't that important, we'll celebrate next weekend. Somehow, next weekend never came. By the time I was in high school, I stopped expecting anything. I'd save up what little money I had and buy myself something small, a book, a video game, or whatever I was into at the time. I told myself I didn't care, but deep down it stung. My siblings, of course, didn't have this problem. My sister had a sweet 16 that looked straight out of a movie, a live band, a custom dress, and even a professional photographer. My parents didn't blink at the cost. Meanwhile, I got a text for my 16th birthday that said, "Happy birthday, we love you," and that was it. My friends threw me a small surprise party that year because they noticed my parents weren't going to do anything. It was one of the best birthdays I'd had, but it also made the contrast in my family's treatment painfully clear. Over the years, I tried to fix things. I'd remind my parents weeks in advance or even suggest small plans, like going out for dinner. Sometimes they'd agree, but the plans would fall apart because something more important came up: my brother's promotion, my sister's college acceptance, a family friend's anniversary. My birthday was always at the bottom of the priority list. At some point, I just gave up. This year, though, I decided I'd had enough. No more being overlooked, no more excuses. I wanted to make a statement that they couldn't ignore. I've been working as a graphic designer for a few years now, and I've saved up a decent amount. I figured, why not use some of that money to do something for myself? If they weren't going to celebrate me, I'd celebrate myself, and I'd make it big enough that they'd have no choice but to notice. I started brainstorming. I thought about what would make the biggest impact: a new car, a designer watch. None of it felt right. Then it hit me: a luxury family trip, something so extravagant that it would be impossible to dismiss. I'd plan the whole thing, pay for it up front, and then present it as a gift to myself. The twist: I'd frame it as a gift for the whole family, but in a way that made it clear this was about reclaiming my birthdays. I ran the idea by my close friends, who were immediately on board. They'd seen how my family treated me over the years, and thought it was about time I stood up for myself. One of them even suggested filming the reveal, just to capture my parents' reactions. I wasn't sure about that, but I liked the idea of making it a memorable moment. Over the next few weeks, I started planting seeds. I casually mentioned to a few relatives that I had something special planned for my birthday. My parents, as usual, didn't seem to notice. The family group chat was full of my sister's latest vacation photos and my brother's work updates. Not a single mention of my birthday. It was almost funny at this point. With the plans finalized and the big day approaching, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. This wasn't just about the trip, it was about making a point. For once, my birthday wouldn't be ignored. I'd make sure of it. As the day got closer, I started dropping hints on social media, teasing a huge announcement. My friends played along, adding to the hype. My family, predictably, remained oblivious. This year, everything was going to change. I wasn't just celebrating my birthday, I was taking back years of neglect and turning them into something unforgettable. With my birthday around the corner, I started paying closer attention to how my family acted. I wasn't surprised when there wasn't a single mention of it. No texts, no plans, nothing. It was like any other week for them. The family group chat was buzzing, though, not about me, of course. My brother was talking about his promotion party. Turns out he'd scheduled it for the same week as my birthday. Typical. Everyone in the chat was hyping him up, congratulating him, and asking about the details of the party. My birthday? Not even a footnote. At this point, I was all in on my plan. I'd already secured the centerpiece, a luxury cruise package for the family. It wasn't just any cruise either, this was top tier. Balconies, gourmet dining, private excursions. It cost me a chunk of my savings, but I didn't care. This wasn't just a birthday gift for myself, this was my way of saying, you can't ignore me anymore. Once the booking was done, I started working on the reveal. I wanted it to be a moment no one would forget. I reserved a small venue, set up catering, and even put together a video presentation about the trip. My friends thought the whole thing was brilliant. They'd been cheering me on since I told them the plan. A few of them even offered to help with the setup, which I gladly accepted. Next, I sent out invitations. I made it clear this wasn't a regular birthday party. It was a special celebration. I invited some extended family members who'd always been kind to me but left out my parents and siblings. Not because I didn't want them to come, but because I wanted them to find out about it later. I knew that would get under their skin. The social media teasers came next. I posted vague updates, big announcement coming soon, and can't wait to share this with everyone. My friends chimed in with comments, building the hype even more. Meanwhile, my siblings started getting nosy. My sister asked if I had any plans for my birthday, which I played off casually. My brother, too busy with his promotion party, didn't seem to notice or care. The day before my birthday, my parents called. It wasn't about me, though. They were asking if I could bring something to my brother's party. While we were on the phone, I casually asked if they'd made any plans for my birthday. They paused, clearly caught off guard, and mumbled something about how we could probably grab dinner if there's time. I thanked them for letting me handle the day and hung up, smiling. They had no idea what was coming. That evening I finalized everything for the reveal. The cruise package details were ready, the video presentation looked perfect, and the venue was set. A few doubts started creeping in. Was this too much? Would it backfire? But every time I second-guessed myself, I thought about all those birthdays I'd spent alone, waiting for someone to care. My friends reassured me I was doing the right thing. They reminded me this wasn't just about the cruise, it was about standing up for myself. To add a little more flair, I posted a countdown timer on social media that night, less than 24 hours to go. The comments flooded in, with friends and a few curious relatives asking what it was about. I didn't respond, letting the suspense build. I went to bed knowing that tomorrow was going to be a game changer. The stage was set. My family didn't know it yet, but this birthday was going to be one they'd never forget. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to exactly what I expected. Silence. No texts, no calls, nothing from my family. My friends, on the other hand, didn't miss a beat. Messages started pouring in right after midnight. Some sent jokes about how this was finally my year, while others hyped me up about the party. It was a good start to the day. After grabbing a quick breakfast, I headed to the venue to set up for the big reveal. My friends were already there, helping to arrange the decorations and check the presentation setup. The space looked amazing, simple but classy, with a backdrop that made it perfect for photos. The video presentation was loaded onto a screen at the front, ready to go. A table at the side displayed small party favors I'd prepared for the guests. Everything was on point. By the time the first guests started arriving, the atmosphere was buzzing. My aunts, uncles, and a few cousins showed up, all curious about what this special celebration was about. They mingled, exchanged guesses, and asked me what was going on, but I kept them in suspense. The vibe was light and fun, and it felt great to be surrounded by people who actually cared. Around mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed with the first sign of life from my parents. It was a simple, generic happy birthday text, no punctuation, no effort. I replied with a polite thank you, and that was the end of it. My siblings, meanwhile, were busy posting on social media. My brother shared photos from his promotion party planning, and my sister uploaded selfies from some outing. Neither mentioned my birthday at all. As the venue filled up, it was time for the main event. I stood at the front, looking out at the crowd of extended family and friends. I started with a short speech, thanking everyone for coming and sharing a bit about why I'd organized the event. I didn't hold back. I talked about how birthdays had always been a sore spot for me, how I'd often felt overlooked, and how this year I wanted to change that. The room was quiet as I spoke, and I could see some relatives nodding along, clearly understanding where I was coming from. Then came the big moment. I hit play. On the video presentation, which began with photos from past birthdays, empty tables, grocery store cakes, and other reminders of the lackluster celebrations I'd endured, the video transitioned into a reveal of the luxury family cruise I'd booked. Pictures of the ship, the destinations, and the activities flashed across the screen, ending with a message that read, "Happy birthday to me, this is how I celebrate." The room erupted in applause. Some of my relatives looked genuinely impressed, while others exchanged whispers, clearly caught off guard. A few came up to hug me, saying how proud they were of me for doing something so bold. My friends, who had been in on the plan, were grinning from ear to ear. Not everyone was thrilled, though. I noticed my parents and siblings had started seeing the social media posts from the party. Within minutes, my mom had commented on one of the photos, saying something about how proud she was of me. It felt awkward and forced, like she was trying to save face. My siblings stayed quiet online but later texted me separately. My sister called the whole thing a bit much, while my brother sarcastically congratulated me on making a scene. The extended family wasn't holding back, though. Several of them pulled me aside to share their thoughts on my parents' behavior. Some even shared their own stories of feeling ignored or underappreciated by them over the years. It was eye-opening, but also a little sad. I realized I wasn't the only one who had dealt with this dynamic. As the party wound down, I spent some time with my friends, who toasted to the success of the event. They'd been my biggest supporters through all of this, and I couldn't have pulled it off without them. One of them jokingly suggested that I make the cruise an annual thing, but we all knew this wasn't about the trip. It was about finally being seen and heard. By the end of the night, my phone was blowing up with notifications. The photos and videos from the party were gaining traction, with comments from friends, family, and even a few coworkers who'd caught wind of it. My parents and siblings, however, were noticeably absent from the online chatter. When I finally got home, I sat down and scrolled through the posts again. There was a mix of reactions, support, surprise, and a bit of jealousy. But one thing was clear: I'd made my point. For the first time in years, my birthday wasn't just a forgotten date on the calendar. It was a day to remember. The morning after the party, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. My family group chat, which had been silent about my birthday for days, was suddenly alive with activity. My parents and siblings had clearly seen the photos and videos from the event, and they were not happy. The first message came from my mom. She demanded a family meeting to discuss the cruise, calling it unfair that such a big decision was made without consulting everyone. My dad chimed in soon after, saying that the trip should have been a collective family effort. My siblings didn't hold back either. My brother accused me of intentionally leaving them out to make them look bad, while my sister said the whole thing was over the top and unnecessary. I read through the messages but didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sent a screenshot of the family group chat from a week ago, the one where everyone had been discussing my brother's promotion party while ignoring my birthday. I added a caption. I gave everyone a chance to plan something, but no one bothered. This is what I did for myself that didn't go over well. My brother doubled down, saying I was blowing things out of proportion and trying to make him the villain. My sister called me attention-seeking and accused me of excluding them on purpose. My parents tried to shift the narrative, saying I had misunderstood their intentions over the years. My mom even threw in a classic excuse, claiming they had always been busy and never meant to hurt me. Meanwhile, my extended family was reaching out privately. A few aunts and cousins messaged me to say how much they loved the event, and to share their own stories of being overlooked by my parents in different situations. It was reassuring to know I wasn't imagining things, but it also made me realize just how deep these patterns ran. Social media wasn't helping my parents' case either. The event photos had gained traction, with friends, coworkers, and mutuals commenting on how creative and bold the gesture was. Some of my coworkers even mentioned it at work, saying they admired the way I turned a negative situation into something positive. My parents, on the other hand, were clearly feeling the heat. Their social circle had caught wind of the drama, and they weren't handling it well. Later that afternoon, I got a text from my mom. It was a half-hearted apology, blaming busy schedules for the years of neglect and saying they'd always meant to do better. She suggested we split the cruise so the whole family could attend, framing it as a way to heal from the situation. I replied that the booking was non-refundable and non-transferable, which was true. That didn't stop her from pressing the issue, though. My siblings weren't any better. They teamed up to confront me, accusing me of ruining future birthdays for everyone by making this year all about me. I stayed calm and explained that this wasn't about them. It was about taking control of my own birthday after years of being ignored. That only seemed to make them angrier. In contrast, my friends were nothing but supportive. They reminded me that I didn't owe anyone an apology and encouraged me to keep setting boundaries. One of them joked that my parents' sudden interest in family meetings was proof that the party had hit a nerve. As the day went on, I noticed my parents getting more desperate. They started calling, leaving voicemails about how this cruise could have been a bonding experience for the whole family if only I had included them in the planning. I didn't answer. I knew where this was headed. They wanted to guilt me into changing the narrative. By the evening, my dad sent a message saying they wanted to have a face-to-face meeting to clear the air. I knew this was their way of trying to regain control of the situation, but I agreed to meet. I figured it was better to address everything head-on rather than letting it drag out. Before responding, I made it clear to myself this meeting wasn't going to be about appeasing anyone. It was about laying everything on the table. As I wrapped up the day, I realized something had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't looking for validation from my family. The success of the party, the support from my friends, and even the fallout had shown me that I could stand up for myself and create my own happiness. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going back to being the forgotten middle child. The family meeting was set for the following Saturday at a neutral location, a small cafe that we'd all been to before. I brought one of my close friends along for support. They stayed in the background but within earshot, just in case things got out of hand. My parents and siblings arrived together, looking tense. It was clear from the start that this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. As soon as we sat down, my mom launched into it. She accused me of trying to divide the family, claiming that my party and the cruise reveal had humiliated them in front of the extended family. She said it was unfair to exclude them from the planning, and that my actions had made them look like bad parents. My dad, sitting quietly beside her, nodded occasionally but didn't add much. I stayed calm and let her finish before responding. I explained that the event wasn't about humiliating anyone. It was about celebrating myself after years of being overlooked. I reminded them of all the birthdays they'd forgotten or brushed aside and pulled out screenshots of past family group chats where my birthday wasn't even mentioned. I pointed out the stark contrast between how my siblings' milestones were celebrated and how mine were ignored. My siblings didn't take kindly to that. My brother interrupted, saying he hadn't noticed any favoritism and accusing me of making a big deal out of nothing. My sister chimed in, calling me dramatic and saying that if I had a problem, I should have spoken up sooner. I wasn't about to let them rewrite history. I calmly explained how I'd tried over the years, dropping hints, making suggestions, even planning things myself, only to be dismissed every time. I also mentioned how other family members had noticed the same pattern. That seemed to catch my parents off guard. They exchanged a look, clearly flustered. When I brought up the messages of support I'd received from aunts, uncles, and cousins, my mom's tone shifted. She started crying, saying she'd done her best and hadn't realized I felt so unloved. She claimed that juggling work, family, and other responsibilities had made it hard to give everyone equal attention. While she cried, my dad stayed silent, looking uncomfortable. I acknowledged her feelings but didn't back down. I told her that while I understood life could get busy, it didn't excuse years of neglect. I made it clear that my actions weren't meant to hurt anyone. They were meant to address a problem that had been ignored for too long. When I pressed my dad, asking why he'd never stepped in, he admitted they could have done more. He said he'd always assumed my mom had things under control and didn't realize how much it had affected me. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the closest thing I'd ever gotten from him. Then the blame game started. My parents turned on each other, arguing about who was responsible for planning family events. My mom accused my dad of being uninvolved, while my dad countered that she insisted on handling birthdays herself. My siblings looked visibly uncomfortable as the argument escalated. I took the opportunity to point out how neither of them had ever noticed or cared that my siblings didn't advocate for fairness either. My brother and sister had happily accepted the spotlight every year without once questioning why I didn't get the same treatment. That seemed to hit a nerve. My sister shifted in her seat, avoiding eye contact, while my brother crossed his arms defensively. At that point, I decided to lay down some boundaries. I told them that moving forward, I wouldn't tolerate being ignored or dismissed anymore. If they wanted to be part of my life, they needed to make an effort, not just on my birthday, but in general. I also made it clear that any future plans involving me would have to be genuine, not performative. My parents reluctantly agreed to try harder, but their tone made it clear they were more concerned about damage control than actually fixing the underlying issues. To my surprise, my sister softened a bit. She admitted she hadn't realized how hurtful the dynamic was and offered a hesitant apology. It wasn't much, but it was something. The meeting ended on a tense note. There was no grand resolution, no group hug or heartfelt reconciliation. We walked out of the cafe divided, each of us clearly processing things in our own way. My parents and siblings left together, still talking quietly among themselves. My friend and I stayed back for a while, decompressing and talking through what had just happened. As I walked home later that evening, I felt a strange mix of empowerment and resignation. I'd said my piece and stood my ground, but I also knew some relationships might never fully heal. For the first time, though, I felt okay with that. I wasn't looking for their validation anymore. Whatever came next, I was ready. After the tense meeting, I decided to step back from my family for a while. I didn't block anyone or make a dramatic announcement, but I stopped responding to non-essential messages. I needed space to process everything and figure out how to move forward. In the meantime, my extended family kept reaching out. A few relatives called to check in, and others sent encouraging texts, reaffirming that they understood where I was coming from. Their support meant a lot. It felt like someone in my family finally saw me. A few days later, my sister surprised me with a follow-up message. She apologized again, this time more sincerely. She admitted that she hadn't thought much about how our family dynamic affected me until the meeting. She even said she'd noticed how my birthdays were often overlooked, but didn't realize how hurtful it must have been. It was the first time I felt like she genuinely understood. We exchanged a few more messages, and while it didn't erase years of frustration, it was a step in the right direction. My parents, on the other hand, were all over the place. One day, my mom would send a long, heartfelt text about how she wanted to rebuild our relationship. The next day, she'd send a passive-aggressive message about how the cruise could have been a great family bonding experience if only I'd included them. My dad mostly stayed quiet, but when he did reach out, it was usually to echo my mom's sentiments. Their inconsistency made it hard to trust their intentions, so I kept my responses polite but brief. During this time, I started therapy. I hadn't realized just how much growing up in that environment had affected me until everything came to a head. Therapy helped me unpack the years of emotional neglect and develop healthier ways to set boundaries. It was tough work, but it felt good to take control of my own narrative. Then came the cruise. I invited a small group of close friends to join me, and we set off on what turned out to be an incredible trip. The ship was as luxurious as I'd hoped, and we spent the days exploring beautiful destinations, eating amazing food, and just enjoying ourselves. I posted a few updates on social media, nothing over the top, just pictures of the scenery and the group having fun. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People commented on how happy I looked and praised me for taking time to celebrate myself. It was a stark contrast to the guilt-tripping I'd been getting from my parents. Speaking of my parents, they weren't thrilled about the posts. My mom left a passive-aggressive comment on one picture about how it would have been nice to share this experience as a family. She deleted it later, but not before a few relatives saw it and called her out. My dad stayed quiet, as usual, but I heard through the grapevine that they were both upset about being left out. Interestingly, my sister started to come around. She told me she'd been talking to my parents, trying to help them see things from my perspective. She also admitted that she'd been thinking about how our family prioritized her and my brother's milestones while sidelining mine. It was the most self-awareness I'd seen from any of my siblings, and it gave me a bit of hope that things could improve. As the holidays approached, my parents invited me to a family gathering. They promised it would be special and hinted that they wanted to make amends. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but after some thought, I decided to go. I made it clear that I would leave if my boundaries weren't respected. When I arrived, I could tell they were trying. My mom had set up a small table with a belated birthday gift, a thoughtful gesture that I hadn't expected. My dad greeted me warmly, and even my brother was less standoffish than usual. The evening wasn't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, but it was a step in the right direction. The biggest surprise came when my sister spoke up during dinner. She brought up how the family had overlooked my birthday in the past and how unfair it was. She didn't sugarcoat it or make excuses. She just acknowledged the problem and encouraged everyone to do better. My parents looked a little uncomfortable but nodded in agreement. It wasn't a full resolution, but it felt like progress. As the night wound down, I realized that while things weren't completely fixed, they were moving in a better direction. My parents seemed to genuinely want to try, even if their efforts still felt a bit clumsy. My sister's newfound perspective gave me hope that at least one relationship in my family might improve significantly. Looking back, the cruise wasn't just about reclaiming my birthday, it was a turning point. It forced my family to confront years of neglect and made me realize that I didn't need their validation to feel worthy. Moving forward, I'm committed to prioritizing myself and surrounding myself with people who genuinely care. Whether my family becomes part of that circle remains to be seen, but for now, I'm at peace with where things stand.